président du syndicat mixte du circuit des 24 heures du Mans. Le comité d'honneur des 24 heures du Mans est...
Welcome to the 70th running of one of the world's most famous races, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the classic sports car race in the calendar, and a race which is very different this year. Remember, last year it was a round of the World Championship and attracted just over 20 cars. Some big names here. Here's Thierry Boutsen, 5-times winner Derek Bell, although in the Cougar he doesn't stand a chance of overall victory because this race is going to be a battle between Toyota and Peugeot. In a separate category, the new GT category, basically road-going cars, Jaguar returned to Le Mans after a year with the fabulous XJ220. That's the David Brabham, John Nielsen, David Coulthard car. Here are some of the older turbo cars, Ratzenberger, Nagasaki and Martini. They're in the Saab Toyota, but on pole position it is the V10 Peugeot 905. A lot of Grand Prix technology. Jeff Brabham, the oldest of the three Brabham brothers, driving that car with two younger French drivers. Here we see the long grid and how nice it is to see a big field of cars here back at Le Mans. But one of the problems, great speed differentials. The Toyotas and the Peugeots probably have somewhere in the region of 50 or 60 miles an hour on some of these cars towards the back of the grid. Cars like the Venturas and some of the Porsches. It has to be said, some of these with amateur drivers at the wheel. So, in qualifying, the Peugeots and the Toyotas running very close together. The flags flutter, and we suspect a battle royal between the best from Japan and Peugeot, of course, the defending champions. The race won last year by Derek Warwick, Mark Blundell, both of Britain, of course, and Yannick Dalmar. Well, here we are in the third of the Toyotas, camera car. That's the Atchison-Wallace car. Actually, Pierre-Henry Raffanel at the wheel to start the race. And they are off. The pace car has peeled off into the pit road, and Peugeot, cheering the French crowds, are initially in the lead, but Toyotas are mixing it with them. But 24 hours to go. We suspect it's going to be something in the region of 370, maybe 375 laps, this race, of the 13.6 kilometre circuit. And what a fantastic circuit it is. Of course, much of this carved out on public roads. And there we see some good action from Pierre-Henry Raffanel's Toyota. Raffanel racing mainly in Japan these days. So we may see some early skirmishings. Last year there was a real Grand Prix going on for the first couple of hours, and the initial leader is the number 2 car of Alio Mauro Baldi and the veteran Jean-Pierre Jabouille, who is the test driver for the Peugeot team. Peugeot, of course, desperately keen to win this race for the second year, and this is very much the swan song for their competitions manager or competitions director, Jean Todt, who after this race is leaving to join Ferrari, and he has worked a lot of magic for Peugeot, has brought them the World Rally Championship, has brought them success, of course, in the Paris-Dakar, and success last year in the 24-hour race, but very disappointed that Peugeot decided at top board level not to go into Grand Prix racing, so has decided to move down to Italy. And Jean Todt, the former co-driver who was so successful in rallying for many years, very much the mastermind of this effort at Le Mans. Absolutely no expense spared, but Toyota are well prepared also. Well, this is just the first lap, and so we have a Peugeot leading a Toyota, leading another Peugeot, 2 more Toyotas, and then another Peugeot. There's 3 Peugeots and 3 Toyotas, and it will be astounding if victory does not come from one of these 6 cars. if by some strange quirk of fate they did all fail or falter, then we'd be looking for a victory from one of the old-style Porsche turbo cars or Toyota turbo machines. Well, those leading six keeping in fairly close formation thus far. Now the Alio Baldi Jabwi car was involved in a practice accident and was quite badly damaged, but it appears to have been rebuilt. There was some confusion about this and even suggestions that maybe a substitute chassis had been replaced. Well, it is always good to lead at the end of the first lap, but look how close it is, because as we turn left and right and through the Ford chicane just before the start-finish line, we have that mixture of Peugeots and Toyotas, all with the V10 engines pushing out somewhere in the region of 600 brake horsepower, running very closely together. And let's hope this is a portent of things to come. And already in problems at the end of the first lap, the Venturi LM 500, driven by Costas Loss, Johannes Badrut and Claude Brana, the Rattel team car. So this is the number 36 machine of Sakaya, Irvine and Suzuki. Just point out that is Toshio Suzuki, not Aguri Suzuki, the Grand Prix driver, who has raced for Toyota at Le Mans in the past and actually had a very big accident here just about 3 years ago. So after 3 laps, Peugeot, then the 3 Toyotas, then the second Peugeot, and then up in 6th place, the Jost Porsche of Manuel Reuter, former winner, John Winter and Frank Jelinski, which had qualified in 7th place. And into the pits, the Jaguar of Wyn Percy, Armin Hahn and David Leslie. And currently leading that category, the Hans Stuck Walter Roll Porsche. And a lot of controversy surrounding those Jaguars. We'll talk about that a little later. It all concerns the fact they are not running catalytic converters. And there we have a moment from Philippe Alliot. And Philippe Alliot thus lost the lead. Just going in a trifle deep, locking up the brakes out there on the gravel. And just a bit of over-enthusiasm. So we have a new leader, the Irishman Eddie Irvine, who is another regular racing out in Formula 3000 in Japan. And the little WR coming into the pits, Bernard Santal, the best known of those drivers in the Category 3 class, which we saw for the first time last year. And now the first series of major pit stops of the top teams. And of course, pit strategy, very important at Le Mans. There's the number 3 car of Jeffrey Babham, Hillary and Bouchot coming in. And time to get in. The belts can't be done up until all the fuel is indeed in the car. Now there's a nice in-car shot there. These huge new pits at Le Mans, which we're seeing for the 3rd year now. The old pits were frankly outmoded, but the ACO have done a magnificent job, and also local government support to build the pits complex, complete with a grandstand on the top of them, and of course all the hospitality boxes. Well, after the first series of pit stops, the battle between Peugeot and Toyota finally poised. Neither team having an advantage so far. The Alio Baldi Jabwi car comes in. Philippe Alliot climbs out. The little Italian Mauro Baldi, former world sports car champion, raced for Mercedes-Benz when they were in sports car racing, climbs into the car. Le Mans, of course, is about much more than a motor race. It is a great French festival. No race has the atmosphere of Le Mans. And there you see the problems with some of the slower cars at Venturi. They're just temporarily holding up the Toyota. And Toyota in the lead after the first pit stops, the Eddie Irvine Sakaya Suzuki car. And just tucking in behind the number 15 Kramer Porsche, driven by Almo Capelli, Robin Donovan and Steve Fossett. And now the number 25 Nisso Toyota. This is one of the old turbo cars in the pits. One of bit of action there in the pits. The pits can get very crowded indeed. Now here's one of Porsche Carreras. This is the Harold Groves car. Very experienced driver, but big problems for that. And that looks fairly terminal. Harold Groves, very successful German driver. So, after 1 hour, Toyota leading Peugeot by just 18 seconds. In a race of 24 hours, they may as well be running side by side. Long, long way to go. Early evening then now at Le Mans. Lights ablaze on the Toyotas to warn the slower cars of their intending arrival, and they'll zap past some of those cars at a speed differential of 50 or 60 miles an hour. That's one of the problems that the professionals have to contend with. The number 33 Belter of Patrick Gonin, Bernard Santal and Alain Lemall spinning. But Gona and Santal are professional drivers, and look at this sort of traffic jam here. We saw a Venturi in that. Really, the Venturi is very much bit players compared with the Jaguars and Porsches in the GT category. And pit stop time for the Peugeot. And this is the number 2 car, Mario Baldi and Jabouille. This car was in the lead at the end of the 3rd hour. Oh, and a Marshall knocked over there as the number 3 car comes in, the Jeffrey Brabham car, and here we see a Porsche, driven rather too enthusiastically, and a very well-known driver amongst that trio is Jesus Pereira, who so nearly finished in the top 3 4 years ago. Actually broke down just quarter of an hour from the finish. And Peugeot and Toyota literally wheel to wheel, and this is the battle indeed for the lead between the Lees Lammers Fangio-driven car and the number 1 Boutsen Dalmas Fabi machine. So quite a motor race going on here between the leading Toyota and the leading Peugeot. In this case, the Peugeot has its lights on just to intimidate the Toyota as much as anything else. Of course, this race held virtually on Midsummer's Day, so a very long day. Unlike the Daytona 24-hour sports car race, the only other remaining major sports car race in the world now that the championship has been scrapped, and that race held in many more hours of darkness. Just see some sparks coming up from the magnesium skid plates of the Peugeot as the leaders are held up by Venturi. Marshall's flagging furiously. and a multinational group of marshals here. Many British marshals travelling over to Le Mans always to assist. And the whine there of the fabulous V10 engines. 3.5 litres. Non-turbocharged. A puff of smoke there from one of the Cougars. And the Pierre Hivert, Jean-Louis Ricci, Jean-François Yvon car being lapped. And 5-time winner Derek Bell, of course, driving the other car and saying how impressed he is with the organisation of the Courage team. But of course, these Porsche-powered Courages do not have the power. And there's a problem, the power of the Toyotas. And there we have a problem with the Toyota, the Georges Fouché, Stefan Ansgar AL car, the turbo car, and it's blown a right rear tyre and is limping back to the pits. And into the pits, the Rafanel Atchison Wallace car. That Toyota had some early electrical problems, having run in 3rd position early on. The whole gaggle of cars there going over the crest of the hill and then diving down into Mulsanne, the famous Mulsanne corner at the end of the Mulsanne Straight, now of course with its 2 chicanes, and then from the Mulsanne corner a very, very fast section towards Indianapolis corner. These cars touching somewhere in the region of 200 miles an hour before braking into Indianapolis, which has got a nasty right kink before the 90-degree left-hand corner. That's the left of Indianapolis. And then the second part of the Indianapolis complex, that corner does not actually have a name. And then another fast run down to the Virage Porsche as we go back to some chicane action. And still, this fabulous duel between Peugeot and Toyota continues from the late afternoon through into the early evening. Leading the number 1 car of Boutsen, Dalmas and Fabi. And just behind it, the Toyota of Lees, Lammers and Fangio, the nephew, of course, of the great Jean-Manuel Fangio. Fangio now domiciled in North America, where he drives for Toyota and has been dominating the IMSA series. Toyota running different cars, their 4-cylinder engines, in fact. So another pit stop, in fact, for the lead car. The number 1 machine. And already the door is open. You see Thierry Boutsen climbs out. In climbs Yannick Dalmas. And we go in cab with one of the Toyotas. And yellow flags wave, and just look at the reflections off the windscreen. And well, there we have a car that's had a fairly substantial accident. Can't quite. Oh, now we see it's the number 76 car, the Enzo Calderari, Luciano Pagotto, Lillian Keller car, was running in 27th spot, and substantial damage to that, and I doubt very much if that will continue. Porsche currently leading the GT category with the Hans Stuck. Walter Roll, Hurley Hayward entry, which qualified 21st overall in front of the Jaguars. And just 9.3 seconds between the leading Peugeot and Toyota. And that Porsche back in the pits now, and I think we just saw the driver who'd crashed it, which was Lillian Keller. Well, they're trying to fix that. Meanwhile, here is one of those fabulous Jaguars, David Brabham, John Nielsen, David Coulthard sharing that machine, and now in fact leading the GT category. The second Jaguar in second place, for there has been a drama with the leading Porsche. Meanwhile, here's one of the old Spices, Nick Adams amongst the driving team there, one of the old C2 cars. And here is the Stuck Rural Hayward car, which is very much the favourite to win the GT category, now making up ground on the Jaguars, which are currently in front of it. But here we have the top Porsche, the Le Mans team Porsche, the factory Porsche of Stuck, Rural and Hayward. I think it's Rural at the wheel, and obviously got involved in an accident. Maybe we're going to see it here at the chicane. With the lights. Bang! That was it. And well, hitting the Deborah up the rear. Possibly some oil down at that chicane. And that is the result. Well, then a big setback, and also a moment for a Toyota. A setback for the factory Porsche Carrera. And a lot of action down at the chicane there. You see that oil slick, and the Porsche is stopped, and I suspect that the oil radiator might have been holed, and Walter Roll has continued to try and get back to the pits, and that the car has seized. Well, that is most fortuitous for Jaguar, and here, after 6 hours, a quarter of race distance, Peugeot, Toyota, Peugeot, Toyota. The battle continues. There is Jean Todt at the computer. And there is the number 2 car, which is running down in 6th spot at the moment, the Alio Baldi Jabouille car. That car, in fact, had lost time with an oil leak. And so darkness descends on Le Mans. With the Peugeot starting to take the edge from Toyota. Jabouille climbs back into the cockpit, the first man ever to win a Grand Prix, incidentally, with a turbocharged car for Renault. That Peugeot with a lot of work to do after its early problems. And more work in the pits. The Nisso team car. And the night proved to be particularly cruel for the number 38 car, the car which had led at the end of the 4th hour and had battled there with the number 1 car, the Lees Lammers Fangio car. There's Philip Alliot, the Lees Lammers Fangio car, having gearbox problems and dropping back. Number 36 Toyota lying in 3rd place into the pits, the Eddie Irvine Sakaya Suzuki car. A little bit of neck exercising for Philippe Alliot, of course current Grand Prix driver for La Rousse. And more pits action. Jabouille climbing out after his stint. Philippe Alliot gives him the thumbs up. It's the same in any language, I think. And Jean Todt, I'm sure he'll stay up the full 24 hours. Checks the length of the pit stop. And the Peugeot accelerates back into the night. And some slow motion here of the filling procedure. Meanwhile, many of the fans have gone off to the pleasures of the fairground, while some of the mechanics were able to catch a little bit of sleep. I think that man's just been woken up by our cameraman. Yes, know the feeling. So then, to the morning. And really the toll had not been that desperate, but being pushed away the 37 Toyota, the Rafanel, Kenny Atchison, Andy Wallace car with a broken gearbox, and the number 56 Venturi, well mangled. But this was the position. The number 1 car still leading. Yannick Kalmas, the winner last year. Thierry Boutsen, who's done Le Mans many times before, mainly in Porsches. So after the skirmishes into the late evening, Peugeot had got the better of Toyota. This car running strongly in 2nd place, Geoffrey Brabham and the 2 young French drivers. Those 2 drivers, little known outside France. So good histories in French Formula 3 racing, and as I said earlier, have been stalwarts and winners in the Peugeot 905 Spider Cup. The number 36 car lying in 3rd place, and that is now the leading Toyota. And that Spice still going. Hervé Regal, Andy Petrie, and probably the fastest of the trio, Nick Adams of Britain. The Chamberlain Spice actually qualified 18th, but a problem, and it looks fairly terminal. Well, I think that here's another car in trouble. In the GT category, just one of the Jaguars remaining, and although we haven't seen them, we should record that both the Lotus is out. Nice to see Lotus back at Le Mans. Hugh Chamberlain's effort with factory backing. And some of the Porsches there in the GT category. And Jaguar just dropped behind those 2 cars, but number 50 car is in fact the fastest one running, and I think we'll go back in front of those two Porsches. And now problems there for the number one car, and a loose exhaust being worked upon, and that was certainly, and indeed, confirmation there that loses the number one car, the lead of the race. So the Jeff Brabham, Hilary Bouchot car goes. So Peugeot first and second, and that now the leader. Just to recap, all the three Peugeots have led the race. Half distance, the number 3 car was in the lead and led from 4 o'clock in the morning through to 8 o'clock, when the number 1 car led briefly, but then had that exhaust problem, and so back in the lead is the number 3 machine, the Jeffrey Brabham cars. We have another Porsche in trouble with a puncture by the look of things. That is the number 62 machine, the Conrad Motorsport car, the very experienced Franz Conrad with Björn Harada, who we've seen racing for Mazda in the past, and Antonio Herman. But I think he'll get it back to the pits, no problem. And here is the pink Venturi, Patrick Camus, well-known Formula 1 journalist at the wheel, and weaving the car, I think short of petrol perhaps. Yeah, that's definitely the problem. Patrick Camus at the wheel, and Patrick has been around the Grand Prix scene reporting for 15, 20 years or so. And I must admit, I wasn't aware that he was a racing driver as well. There, the Ratzenberger Saab Toyota. Strong driving trio, and well, it looks as the Pink Monster's stopped. Well, that will obviously be a disappointment. And their confirmation of the positions: Peugeot, Peugeot, Toyota, Peugeot, Toyota. In fact, the third of the Toyota still shown on the leaderboard, but is now out of the race. This, of course, the only chance to see these cars this year. They're only racing this once, these Peugeots, which dominated last year's World Sports Car Championship, despite the efforts of Toyota. And a driver change there. And here is the number 2 car, the one that's had the problems, had an oil leak and lost 39 minutes earlier on in the race. The Alio Baldi Jabouille Peugeot 905. And that is running strongly now, hoping perhaps to make it a Peugeot 123. A bit of a problem with the front bodywork. And just some of the dirt being blown out of the front of the car, actually cleaning the radiator to get a little bit more cooling in. Those radiators can get very clogged at Le Mans. And there is Jean Todt, and there's a famous face, Sir Jack Brabham, 3 times world champion, and looking concerned. But of course he's got sons leading now the race overall, and indeed leading the GT category for Jaguar. His eldest son Jeffrey, and youngest son David, middle son Gary, who is also a racing driver, not in this race, although he has raced here in the past. down and onto the circuit. This 13.6 mile racetrack. And more problems there for number 35, the Lucchini SP91. Luigi Taverna, the best known of the drivers, and a puncture. That car been running down in the mid-30s. Meanwhile, here is the GT leader, the XJ220C, for competition. And indeed, that car's limping with a puncture, and having recently taken the lead of the GT category, may well fall back behind the Monaco Media Porsche Carrera, the number 47 car, Jürgen Bach, Joel Guyet, Dominic Dupuy, which has been running very strongly. Jaguar laps a lot quicker than that, but has had a number of problems, mainly with a fuel leak. So the GT class in the balance, but overall victory certainly looking like going Peugeot's way. Jacques Lafitte there giving one of his co-drivers a little bit of advice. There is the number 34, Bonnet de Bora. That's in category 3, and only 3 cars in that class. And really they are make weights. Meanwhile, the 2 Toyotas still running and currently running together. And one of the 2 slowing there. And that indeed could be more gearbox troubles, really. The Achilles heel of the Toyotas has been the transmissions. And that indeed is the 3rd place car, the number 36 car of Irvine, Sakaya and Suzuki. And the mechanics get ready. And well, that looks fairly serious. The way they put a jack straight under the back of the car, they're going to wheel it back into the garage, and that would spell a transmission change, and that will almost certainly lose that car 3rd place. A car which led at the end of the 1st hour. So disappointment then for Toyota, and it looks as if Jean Todt will be looking at a Peugeot, not 1, 2, 3, 4, but certainly 1, 2, 3. And very much travel stained now after over 20 hours of racing. And some other attractions in the pits also. So a routine stop for Peugeot. Toyota still working on changing that transmission. So now we do have Peugeot 1, 2, 3. And that's certainly what Jean Todt has dreamed of. There is Philippe Alliot, who so wanted to win this race. It doesn't look as if it's going to be, for he is lying in 3rd place. Alliot, remember, losing 39 minutes earlier on with a big oil leak there after 20 hours. You see confirmation, 3 Peugeots and then 3 Toyotas, one of those, in fact, one of the old-style turbo cars, which is leading category 2. But this is the atmospheric 3.5 litre car. But the might of Japan, it appears vanquished. Japanese cars only, of course, winning this race once with the rotary Mazda. Oh, I'm not sure. Well, it looks as if it's a time for a rotary engine. No rotary engines here anymore. Philippe Alliot there making some kind of signal. But the number 3 car continues in the lead. Ah, now why is she in the pits? No good reason, I suggest. And flags for that 38 Toyota as it picks its way up through the field And that car now lying down in 9th spot. There you see Eric Helleray, not a name that's known internationally, but was a fine Formula 3 driver. Now Jaguar back leading the GT category after that puncture, ahead of the Monaco Media Porsche Carrera, the Jürgen Barth car. And that's the position in category 3. And the Jaguars, or that remaining Jaguar, actually running under protest because there is a suggestion that the car is not legal because it does not run a catalytic converter as it does on the road. And we probably won't hear about the result of that protest for some many months. Unfortunately, that's the way of motor racing sometimes. Here the Alio Baldi Jabouille car into the pits, final pit stop, and a problem with the door. You see the door has blown off there, so a last-minute drama for that car. Maybe we're going to see exactly what happened. There you see the door blowing off and fluttering away. But that can be replaced very quickly indeed, and the number 2 car back in the race. So Philippe Alliot actually at the wheel when he had that scare. Here is the lead car. And Jeff Brabham, who dominated the IMSA series for 3 years, driving for Nissan, driving for Peugeot for the very first time. He's done a lot of IndyCar racing. And, oh dearie me, some exciting in-car action there from Toyota. Now just reeling off those final laps. But people have retired from Le Mans in the very last hour. And that, the position with 1 hour to go. And meanwhile there, a spin from Jos Porsche of Bob Wallach, Henry Pescarolo, and the much lesser known Ronnie Meixner. And that number 18 car just running down in 10th spot. And there's Jeff Brabham. And he accelerates out of the pits for the last time for his final stint. And that's the battle between the 4th and 5th spot. Just a minute between the number 22 and number 36, the 2 different types of Toyota. And that really the last battle left in the race to resolve 4th spot for the number 36 car is still making up ground, with Eddie Irvine doing a particularly strong job at the wheel. Through the chicane after the pits and under the Dunlop Bridge. And now then to the final act of the 70th running of Le Mans, as the 3 Peugeots form up together. In fact, the 3rd car has not quite caught them, for this has been a magnificent day, or day and night we should say, for Jean Todt's team. The other drivers just waiting there in the pits. Thierry Boutsen, who will have to be content with 2nd place. And Jean Todt almost blinking away, indeed blinking away the tears. An emotional moment for him. And in fact they are still racing. But this is what happens at Le Mans at the end. That battle for 4th place resolved, in fact, in the favour of the number 36 Eddie Irvine car. And a race which has seen no rain, unusual at Le Mans. And there you see the reception for Peugeot. They battled with Toyota until the night fell, then transmission problems intervened. Certainly Peugeot had some problems, but the number 3 car running virtually faultlessly. And Jeffrey Brabham of Australia with his 2 French co-drivers, Eric Hellery and Christophe Douchot. And you see winning by just the 1 lap from the Thierry Boutsen car. Yannick Dalmas having to be content with 2nd place this year, and Theo Fabi. And there's Sir Jack. He's got 2 sons to cheer. What a moment for him. Jean Todt is raised shoulder high. And what a moment for Peugeot. But also a great result for Jaguar. A lot of Jaguar fans down there also. For Jaguar have finally claimed the GT category. Well, the French commentator winding up this huge crowd. And now we see the Category 2 winners in the background, but in the foreground, the Jaguar and Union Jacks wave, a huge British contingent here. David Coulthard in the middle. John Nielsen there, of course, has won the race outright in the past. So the 70th running of Le Mans, giving Peugeot a superb 1st, 2nd and 3rd.